Okay, so now we're going to move on to the first part of our melodics, because even though we've got the beats within there at the moment, we've got no real direction for this track. Now, a garage house track definitely has a musical kind of direction, and whatever you kind of come up with first usually kind of dictates the direction you're going with. Now for this, I'm actually going to go for a vocal. I found a vocal earlier in a sample pack, which I think will work really, really well. This is obviously to your own personal taste and your collection. If you have a sample pack or a sample that you found that works really well, whether it's a vocal sample or a keys sample or a bass sample or whatever it is, you have a hook, you have something to then base the rest of the track around. That usually gives you the idea that you need to move forward. Obviously, if you have a singer on tap that you can kind of use, you can work with a songwriter to kind of come up with those lyrics, then that is a great thing to do. But for this course, certainly I wanted to show you how to work from a sample. And as I say, the vocal sample was something that I found before I started doing this project, and I thought, well, yeah, this could work really well. So it's actually out of the Origin Sound R&B Soul pack. Now this is obviously an R&B vocal, but a lot of kind of garage house and certainly garage sounds comes from more soulful kind of vocals. So anything from R&B, anything from garage will certainly work quite well. So I found within here they actually have a folder of vocals within here, and all of these are quite good. All of these work quite well. If you can have a listen to a few of these and see what you think.
Oh, I swear, you and I, we could fly on the wings of... I just wanna love, I just wanna fuck, I just wanna treat you right. Every little touch, boy, got you up, keep me on your mind all night.
So these are all proper R&B kind of vocals. It's quite strange to actually see the quite varied BPM in these as well. So some of them are like 89 BPM, 100 BPM. The one that I actually found worked really nice was this one, which is actually 125 BPM. This seems to work really, really well. I really like this vocal.
Rain comes falling down, think of me late night when you go out. You don't need me when the world turns upside down. You used to, like you used to. You don't call me when the rain comes falling down.
So the vocal kind of loops round and it works quite well. I mean, the fact that it is 125 BPM actually works in our favour. Obviously, we could have used a R&B vocal that was 89 BPM and then pitched it up. It probably would have worked okay. But obviously, this is 125 BPM, so it does work a lot better for us. We're still working at 120 BPM, which I didn't actually just realise until now. So we should probably increase that, shouldn't we? Garage house, what kind of what BPM are we looking for? Well, I mean, I tend to produce at around about 124 BPM ish. But garage can kind of, depending on the style of kind of garage, it can go up to about 130, 132. It's totally up to you what kind of tempo you're going for. Seeing as we're going to use this vocal, I like this vocal, let's go for 125 BPM. And actually, this might even make our beats sound a whole lot more skippy. So I'm going to drag and drop this vocal in here, and we'll see how this kind of sounds with our drums.
Rain comes falling down.
So that works quite nice. I like the kind of the sound of that vocal. It works quite well. I also like the fact that it has this kind of melody in it already, which is something we could copy or we could take hints from it anyway. And I've already got a few ideas kind of spring into mind as to what we could do with that vocal. It kind of, it has a, it almost falls down in kind of pitch. It goes down.
Rain comes falling down. Think of me late night when you go out.
So you can actually hear the melody that comes from that. So we could use parts of that, or we could have it inspired by that. Also, the fact that the sample is actually labeled up with the key that it's in will obviously give us a big head start as to how we're going to do our keys and our bass all around that. So yeah, I really kind of like that vocal. I think that vocal works quite nicely. Now obviously if you're working with a vocalist and you record your vocal, you're probably going to have to process that vocal quite strongly. You're probably going to have to go over and put some compression on it. You're going to definitely have to EQ it and a whole load of things to kind of make it work before you can even start it fitting in with the mix. Now with using vocals from sample packs, yes, everybody has access to the same vocals, but these vocals are really well produced and they generally will fit in a track almost straight away. There's a few things we can do to kind of improve that, obviously, but there's a lot of EQing and compression we don't need to do because they're already up to a really kind of high standard. So there are a few things I'm going to do with this vocal straight off. So obviously let's get some EQ on there and make sure that works first.
Falling down, think a million nights when you go out. You don't need me when the world turns upside down. You used to, like you used to. You don't call me when the rain comes falling down. Think a million nights when you go.
So I can't really hear or see any kind of problem issues with the EQ. Obviously it has been all EQ'd before, you know, it even went into this sample pack. So we can see that it's all been really well prepared. So depending on the vocal that you get, sometimes you might have to do a bit more kind of EQing. I've just cut a little bit of the bottom end off just for now, which will help it fit in better with the mix. But again, depending on like the drums and how they sit with it all, yeah, we might need to carve out a little bit more of the top or maybe boost a little bit of the top.
Comes falling down. Think a million nights when you go out. You don't need me when the world turns upside down. You used to, like you.
I've actually just noticed that the clap with the vinyl noise on definitely seems to be getting in the way of the vocals, I think. Yeah, that might cause issues. So I'm going to solo that clap. And in fact, I'm going to solo the problem one. So I'm just getting rid of a bit of that vinyl noise. I thought that vinyl noise would be really kind of cool, but it really is kind of causing some issues, I think, with the vocals. So I've literally just cut a bit of the bottom, the end of it off. So we cut a bit of that kind of static sample off at the end. I put a bit of fade out on there so that it obviously is not going to cause us any issues. So that should sound a whole lot better now. I'm going to unsolo that and then unsolo that.
Rain comes falling down.
That's a lot better. That just fits in so much better now. Right, back to the vocal. This is the whole thing with producing. You sometimes are always going back and then fixing something, because as soon as you introduce any element, then that can throw the whole mix off and you might have to adjust something else to make it fit in. So we've got the vocal there. Let's put, I think it's quite dry.
Rain comes falling down.
I think there's a tiny little bit of reverb in there, but I want to put a little bit more reverb in there. So I'm going to take the reverb, the standard reverb in Ableton. A lot of people use third-party reverb, but to be honest, I quite like the reverb within Ableton. And again, with most of these, I kind of start with the default patch. It works quite well. First thing is that dry wet is too high up, so I'm going to take that straight down to about 20%-ish, maybe. Start from there. I want to do the low cut on it because I don't want too much. I don't want too many of the bassy frequencies of the voice in the reverb. I think I'll take off the high cut. I don't think I need that. I think it's going to cause any issues, and I'll just take that low cut up a bit, so it's cutting a little bit more off the bottom end of that reverb. Let's hear how that sounds.
Rain comes falling down. Think a million nights when you go out. You don't need me when the world turns upside down. You used to, like you used to. You don't call me when the rain comes falling down.
So that works a little bit better with the reverb. It's only a tiny little bit of reverb. I've decreased the decay time as well, so it's not quite has as much of a tail on it as well. Increase the dry wet just so you can hear a little bit more of it. Something that you could maybe automate over time. Now I know this is something that comes up in a lot of my courses. A lot of people tend to, well, a lot of music producers definitely use send channels for their reverbs. Generally you'd have maybe 2 or 3 reverbs on the send channel, so you have set settings for those reverbs, and then all of the sounds that you have would then be sent to it. Now I know this principle is great for most producers, but to be honest, I tend to like having a reverb on each individual element. I like kind of playing around with it and how it works. It's not something I always do. I do use send channels quite a bit for different things, but for this use, I'm just going to have the reverb on the actual vocal. So this is working quite well so far. Next thing I could do is maybe put a bit of saturation on it, because it is a very clean vocal. So I might put a bit of saturation on it. Now, whether I put the saturation before or after the reverb, I'm not sure. If I put it after the reverb, it will make it sound a little bit more like a sample, because it's almost like we've sampled something that's got reverb on it, so it's a bit less clean. However, if I put the saturator on before the reverb, yes, it will kind of saturate that vocal, but then the reverb will make it sound a bit cleaner or less clean. I'm not quite sure, but I think the saturator will probably sound better after it anyway. It's one of those things you can try and see, you know, how it comes out. There's a whole load of different things you can do. Rather than the saturator, you could put a pedal on there maybe, or overdrive. Again, you're just putting distortion on there. You're kind of giving it a little bit of character, so it's not quite out of the box, you know, straight out the sample pack.
Rain comes falling down. Think of me late night when you go out. You don't need me when the world turns upside down. You used to, like you used to. You don't call me when the rain comes falling down. Think of me late night when you go out. You don't need me when the world turns upside down. You used to, like you used to. You don't call me when the rain comes falling down. Think of me late night when you go out. You don't need me when the world turns upside down.
So it's not actually kind of doing too much to it, so I'm not quite sure about that. I might get rid of that, because yeah, it's not really kind of doing what I want it to do. Another thing I could do is maybe put some vinyl distortion on there. This will actually make it feel a little bit more kind of old school. So again, this is another one that's all about distorting it slightly, but it's adding a whole load of kind of vinyl sounds ish to it.
Rain comes falling down. Think of me late night when you go out. You don't need me when the world turns upside down. You used to, like you used to. You don't call me when the rain comes falling down. Think of me late night.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure about that. I think the more distortion I put on it kind of really ruins the actual vocal. So yeah, I'm not going to do too much to that. I think it's too clean, and maybe if I was using perhaps a male voice, or I was using chops of a vocal, maybe I might distort them a little bit more. But yeah, I just don't want to ruin it too much. It's sounding pretty good. As I say, it came out of that sample pack quite well, so I don't want to kind of ruin it too much with that. So yeah, so we have the vocal there, and that works pretty well. See how it sounds with everything else again. So that's sounding pretty good. I think one of the other things we can do is actually use this vocal elsewhere. Now I noticed when we were in the sample pack, we actually had a couple of different versions of this vocal. So you got this one.
Rain comes falling down. Rain comes falling down. Late night when you go out.
So it almost sounds like a kind of chorus effect on it, maybe. Maybe it's a layered vocal, but there's definitely some vocals missing. So it's kind of a, yeah, I think you could maybe use that elsewhere in the track. But I'm a big fan of actually using the same vocal more than once within a track. So you can do some interesting things with a vocal. So you can take a vocal that you're already using, then cut it up and use it in some other different ways. One of my favourite ways of doing this is actually looping the vocal in a much tighter, smaller loop and seeing what you can get out of it. So I'm actually going to duplicate this vocal that we got at the moment. I'm just going to mute this vocal. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click into this loop we got here, and I'm actually going to decrease the loop length. So I'm actually going to decrease it to maybe that short. No, maybe a bit longer. So maybe just like 1 beat perhaps. A beat. I think that's about a beat, isn't it? No. Yeah, it's 1 beat. So that's a 1 beat loop within there. And what I'm going to do is, as we're playing it back, I'm actually going to move this loop region and see how it sounds. See if we can find a nice little loop in there. I really quite like that loop. That works quite nicely. It's nice to kind of find loops like this, and again, it's bringing into the that kind of garage element. It almost brings in a flavour of old school kind of speed garage. So speed garage was probably more about 132 BPM, 135 BPM, and it was very much like this kind of US house, garage house kind of feel. It was just a lot faster. So it had those kind of raw drums, but you'd have more kind of rawer, kind of more in your face kind of bass sounds, and then you'd have these kind of looped up vocals and things like that. So let's try and see what we can do with this. So this is just yeah, a very kind of small portion of it, and we could do some interesting things with it. For example, what we could do is we could put a filter on top of it. So let's go into our audio effects and go to the auto filter. I'm going to drop an auto filter on here, and by default it is set to a low pass filter. So the more that we kind of filter out, it kind of takes out the top end and just leaves the low end. So we could start automating that frequency on the filter to kind of create some interesting effects. To kind of really enhance that almost that effect, I'm going to increase the resonance as well. Actually, let's put it before the reverb so we have that kind of reverb sound. And in fact, what we could do is the fact we got the same thing, we could copy like what we did with the ride. So we got the side chain happening with the ride, where we're kind of playing the 2 notes, but we're kind of almost ducking one of those notes. Let's do the same thing with the vocal. So I'm actually going to take this same compressor, the same side chain settings and everything else like that. I'm going to drag and drop it onto our vocal here, but I'm going to hold down the Alt key, so we're copying it, and I'm going to drag and drop that onto that channel. Let's hear how that sounds. So that might just give us an extra little texture in there that we can do. Now, we can actually automate this frequency, but there's also the LFO on here as well, which we could do it. It would automatically automate that frequency for us. So if I increase the amount on this LFO here, I can adjust the speed at which that goes in and out with the rate knob here. And I'm using the phase knob here to kind of pan it. Now we don't have to use the phase knob to pan it. We could put an auto pan on there as well, which is something you can do a bit later. I'm going to take that back down to 0 again, and we'll do that with the auto pan if we want to do that a bit later. But yeah, I think that works really, really well. And again, it's one of those things that kind of brings this kind of old school kind of garage feel to it. So there we go, we've got 2 bits of vocal there. We've got this main kind of vocal, and we have this kind of looped vocal. Now we could also cut up this main vocal, and we probably will do at certain points. I reckon we could take certain phrases within here and then maybe echo them perhaps and do some interesting stuff with that. But I think that's pretty much it for the vocal. I haven't processed it very much because as I say, it came from the sample pack and it worked really, really well. So all I really need to do is put a bit of EQ on it just to make it sit within the mix. And again, put a little bit of reverb on there as well. Now I could also put a little bit of delay on there perhaps, but to be honest, I think it doesn't really need it at the moment. But if it turns out when I put the keys on there and the bass on there, then, you know, you never know. We might need to put some other effects on there. Who knows? But yeah, so far it's sounding pretty good. So let's move on to the next thing.
Thanks everybody for watching, commenting and indeed liking. We really do appreciate all the support we get here on our Sonic Academy YouTube channel. So if you found this video super useful, please, we'd love you to hit the subscribe button. We update the YouTube channel every week with new content. And if you want to watch some more relevant content, just click on the videos beside me.